Most financial headlines today will tell you that the average American household now holds over $1 million in net worth. Reading a number like that can induce an immediate wave of stress for any working professional trying to build their savings. But that headline relies on a statistical illusion. This distribution curve shows how the top 1% of ultra-wealthy individuals pull the average calculation away from the reality of the dense population cluster. Imagine 5 everyday earners standing in a room. If a billionaire walks into that room, the mathematical average of their combined net worth instantly shoots past $100 million. Yet the actual day-to-day financial reality for those original 5 people remains entirely unchanged. Their bank accounts did not suddenly grow. To see where you actually stand in a skewed system, you have to throw out the average entirely and look at the median net worth. The median represents the exact 50th percentile mark, the precise midpoint where half the population has accumulated more wealth and half has accumulated less. We are going to audit the most recent Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances to track this true median trajectory across every major generational cohort. Benchmarking your personal success against raw averages guarantees a false sense of failure. The median provides the only mathematical truth that matters for measuring your actual financial security. We begin our timeline with the under 25 demographic. This is the stage where statistical distortion first appears in the data. This split bar chart shows the gap. Official reports list the average net worth here at roughly $120,000, but reverting to the median reveals a different reality, a net worth of just under $11,000. Accumulating a massive liquid investment portfolio at this stage is mathematically improbable. It is also strategically incorrect. The true financial objectives for entry-level earners revolve around maximizing human capital and learning how to effectively manage initial salary structures. This requires executing a framework of zero debt momentum. That means establishing a reliable emergency cushion and capturing every single dollar of employer matching inside your retirement accounts. These foundational steps are crucial because early adulthood presents a massive macroeconomic barrier. We exist in an environment of high information availability, yet financial literacy rates for young adults hover in the low 30s. Success in the under 25 bracket is defined by establishing the correct compounding trajectory before consumer debt takes hold. Shifting to the 25 to 34 age bracket, the timeline reaches a critical juncture. This is the precise decade where household financial paths begin to aggressively and permanently split. Looking at this line graph, the data gap widens dramatically. The average net worth spikes to $135,000, while the real median lags significantly behind at $39,000. The primary mechanism driving this stagnation is lifestyle creep, a quiet wealth killer that activates during these early peak earning years. As salaries increase, earners frequently finance depreciating vehicles or expand their fixed recurring overhead at the exact same rate. The influx of new money is immediately neutralized by an equivalent outflow. To measure your progress without relying on averages, top institutional wealth frameworks provide a clear benchmark for age 30. Your total net worth should equal 1 full year of your annual gross income. If you earn a $60,000 salary, you need a $60,000 benchmark aggregated across your cash, real estate equity, and retirement accounts. If you reach age 32 and find yourself falling behind this multiple, it requires immediate, aggressive intervention in your monthly savings rate. Increasing that specific savings percentage during this specific decade is what triggers the math of exponential compounding interest in the later stages of life. You also must differentiate between accessible liquid savings and phantom wealth, the temporary paper gains created by short-term surges in housing or market cycles. The 25 to 34 decade ultimately determines whether your increased professional income actually builds generational wealth or merely funds a more expensive baseline existence. Transitioning to the middle-age demographic, we enter the period defined as the peak lifetime earning years. This cohort faces the sandwich generation crisis, which introduces unique structural pressures on household wealth accumulation. Earners are hit with a severe dual care obligation. They carry the financial burden of supporting aging parents while simultaneously raising dependent children. This balance scale visualizes the macro-level weight suppressing this generation. Despite rising incomes, The cohort is weighed down by a collective debt burden of $6.69 trillion. This debt acts as a gravitational pull, suppressing the median net worth curve precisely when it should be accelerating. Instead of funding compounding investments, peak earnings are increasingly diverting into simply servicing the interest on this massive debt load. For this generation, high income does not equate to high net worth. The surplus capital is entirely consumed by structural debt and dual generational obligations. Finally, we examine the end state of the Federal Reserve data, the retirement age cohort, where the financial timeline transitions from accumulation to preservation. This final comparison chart exposes the enormous mathematical gap at the end of the timeline. The reported average sits at a massive $1.6 million, contrasting with a $410,000 median net worth. The defining characteristic of this cohort's perceived wealth is a concept known as trapped equity. Even those who hit that $410,000 median benchmark often lack the accessible cash flow required for actual retirement. The vast majority of this median net worth is illiquid, permanently locked inside the property walls of their primary residence. You cannot pay for groceries or medical bills with drywall and roofing. Daily retirement living expenses require accessible, liquid cash flow instruments, not just theoretical home equity. Arriving at the median net worth target is ultimately insufficient if that wealth cannot be seamlessly converted into usable liquid capital when you step away from your career. From managing entry-level salaries to unlocking final retirement equity, the data provides a clear map of the household financial timeline. Raw mathematical averages function as an economic illusion because they are pulled away from reality by extreme outliers at the top of the distribution. This comprehensive timeline shows the essential benchmarks for financial security: 10.9 thousand early on, 39,000 by 30, and 410,000 at retirement. Bridging these gaps requires aggressive zero-debt momentum and managing your savings rate to combat lifestyle creep. Now, the focus shifts directly to your own balance sheet. It is time to conduct a personal financial baseline audit. Utilize these accurate median data points and institutional multiples to objectively assess exactly where your finances stand today. This audit must be undertaken with strict logic. Strip away the emotional panic induced by false media narratives and look only at the raw numbers. True financial freedom begins the moment you stop measuring your progress against a statistical illusion and start anchoring your strategy in mathematical reality. When evaluating modern financial health, the concept of average wealth creates a severe miscalculation. What looks like a stable, widespread baseline of capital accumulation often masks a reality of dangerous undercapitalization. A handful of extreme high net worth outliers systematically pull the mathematical average upward. This produces a single inflated top-line number that most people accept as the standard measure of financial progress. This skewed distribution curve reveals the exact nature of the divergence. You can see a massive clump of data clustering at a very low true median point, while a long, thin tail of extreme wealth stretches far to the right, dragging the theoretical average along with it. This mathematical gap creates a false sense of security. Workers compare their own balances against inflated average figures, unaware that the true median represents a systemic failure to accumulate enough capital to survive retirement. Securing true financial independence requires discarding these average expectations entirely. The only valid metric for evaluating your trajectory is a strict mathematical age-based income multiplier. Diagnosing exactly where the traditional savings model breaks down requires reverse engineering the timeline. We must audit 4 generational cohorts backward, starting from the terminal state of retirement. Blindly following average financial metrics guarantees a systemic failure of personal wealth accumulation at the very end of your professional lifespan. The terminal state of the wealth timeline exists in the immediate pre-retirement bracket, covering adults aged 55 to 64. On paper, the statistical average net worth for a household in this bracket reaches over $1.5 million. Looking at these 2 vertical bar charts, the contrast is stark. The first bar rapidly scales to that $1.5 million average, while the second bar, representing the true median net worth, barely lifts off the baseline. stalling at roughly $364,000. If we apply the standard 4% safe withdrawal rule, the widely accepted formula for maintaining portfolio longevity in retirement, strictly against that median $364,000 balance, the math is unforgiving. The resulting mathematical yield is exactly $14,500 per year in spendable retirement income. A $14,500 annual yield represents a poverty-level existence, demonstrates why treating savings as a passive activity rather than a process of aggressive asset multiplication is a catastrophic financial risk. Avoiding this exact outcome requires meeting specific milestones long before retirement. The first essential benchmark is accumulating a net worth equal to 8 times your annual salary by age 60. The final terminal benchmark requires scaling my capital to 10 times your annual salary by age 67. Moving backward into the peak earning decade, covering ages 45 to 54, we can trace the exact origin point of this retirement deficit. During these peak earning years, the data shows an average household net worth scaling to nearly $970,000. This horizontal area chart illustrates the severe drop-off for the typical worker. It contrasts the $970,000 statistical average against the true median, which lags massively at just $247,000, exposing a tremendous void in accumulated capital. Escaping this void requires meeting the mid-career gold standard benchmark, accumulating 6 times your annual salary in total net worth by age 50. To apply this to a specific case, if your current salary is $100,000, your strict portfolio target is $600,000. Discovering a deficit at this stage leaves no room for passive accumulation. It requires immediate, aggressive intervention to catch up to the 6 times multiplier before the retirement window closes. The primary operational mechanism to fix mid-career deficits relies on utilizing IRS tax regulations, which explicitly permit catch-up contributions into specialized retirement accounts for workers aged 50 and older. Routing extra capital annually above the standard contribution limits mechanically accelerates the growth of the portfolio, directly closing the distance to the required benchmark. Missing the 6 times multiplier at age 50 mathematically guarantees you will face that poverty-level 4% yield at age 65, unless these aggressive catch-up interventions are deployed. Stepping back further to ages 35 to 44 reveals the most expense-heavy phase of adult life. Here, the statistical average net worth jumps past $500,000, yet the real median net worth trails far behind, sitting at roughly $135,000. This decade introduces a severe environmental drag on wealth creation. Households are absorbing the impact of high mortgage payments, childcare expenses, and general cost of living inflation. Under extreme high-cost pressures, many workers make the seemingly practical decision to pause their regular investment contributions, intending to restart once expenses stabilize. These diverging line graphs show the exact mathematical consequence of that pause. The top line maintains exponential growth through continuous compounding, while the bottom line flatlines during the pause. Even with steeper contributions later in life, the paused portfolio permanently fails to catch up, creating an unrecoverable compounding gap. To maintain the necessary trajectory, the early career baseline benchmark dictates securing a net worth equal to 3 times your annual gross salary by age 40. For a household earning $80,000, this requires a strict baseline target of $240,000. If you are currently below that target, the operational mandates are rigid. Ruthlessly eliminate high-interest consumer debt and prioritize directing capital into low-cost, broad market index funds through tax-advantaged accounts. Failing to secure the 3 times baseline by age 40 means the worker enters their peak earning decade already mathematically defeated by the compounding gap. The absolute foundation of the compounding curve is established prior to age 35. The severe median wealth deficits observed in older cohorts trace directly back to a systemic lack of financial literacy during these earliest working years. Early aggressive capital allocation is the only mathematical way to make the 3 times baseline achievable by age 40. It requires an unrelenting, powerful momentum in low-cost index funds to successfully capture those long-term market yields over time. Harnessing the physics of compound interest in the very first working decade drastically reduces the total amount of principal capital you actually have to earn and invest later in life. Ignoring this math in early adulthood guarantees the immense systemic deficits witnessed in the 35, 45, and 55 age brackets. Assembling this generational deconstruction into a single mathematical model clarifies the precise requirements for financial survival. The strict multiplier formula requires securing 3 times your salary by age 40 and 6 times by age 50. That foundation must then scale to 8 times your salary by age 60 and peak at 10 times your salary by age 67. Relying on the true median path ensures you will fall short of these multipliers, leading mathematically to an unlivable $14,500 annual retirement yield. Escaping the median trap means permanently discarding the illusion of average wealth and organizing your finances defensively against the data. True financial independence is not a product of traditional passive savings. It is the result of aggressive, continuous, and highly targeted mathematical benchmarking.